Hello, in this video I want to go over what culture is, how we can misconceive it, and how you can use literature to find culture. First, what is culture? Culture is the collective knowledge, experience, beliefs, values, attitudes, meanings, hierarchies, religion, notions of time, and roles of a large group of people. So that could be an entire nation like America or England. It could be a region like Southeast America or Northeast America. Or it could be a city. Sometimes neighboring towns can have completely different cultures. And also large families, even small families. Every family has different values and practices. So one family can be completely different from another as far as culture goes. Let's go back and review some of these terms that we use to analyze culture. One of the words that I think some of you might not know is the word hierarchies. And that's kind of the order of things, like your preference on order. So if I had a hierarchy of need, that would be the most important thing to me down to the least important thing to me in order for me to survive. So the most important thing for me to survive is food and nutrients. If I'm not getting that, then my body can't function. Next, I probably need some shelter over my head. So that would be second priority. And third priority might be electricity. So it's the order of values. So how one thing is more important than another thing. The other one that you may not know off the top of your head is notions of time. And that just means how some cultures may perceive time to move faster than others. If you lived in New York City, your notion of time is going to be a lot faster than those that live in a tribe in Africa. Time goes much slower for them. But in New York, the more busy you are, the faster things move. And then in cultures that don't have a lot of activities, like maybe they're more agricultural cultures, things are going to move slower for them. So those are the traits that we can use to talk about with culture, or talk about culture with. And one thing I want to clarify is culture is not a stereotype. A stereotype is an assumption on how a group of people behave. So that's like saying policemen like donuts, or all Americans are not smart. It's just based on your perception. Like I may have those notions based on one or two people that I met, and I've just applied them to everybody. But they're not based on fact. They're not based on a majority. It's just a couple of instances, and it's your own opinion. Another example would be if a person is Muslim, and sometimes we think that Muslims dislike the United States. And I've noticed a typo. I should capitalize United States. In truth, yes, some Muslims have been known to have strong negative opinions about the United States, but it isn't true for all of them. That makes it a stereotype. If disliking the United States, I did it again, I didn't capitalize it. If disliking the United States was part of their culture, it would be a fact that the majority of Muslims dislike America. So stereotypes are assumptions based on your opinion and not based on fact. And culture is factual and can be seen in a variety of different people in the group. Here's another example to help you understand what culture is rather than what it is not. If I were going to describe to you what the American culture is, this would be easy for me because I am an American and I've had a lot of experience with it, living in America for the last 32 years. I would describe American culture as valuing capitalism. The majority of people in America have a very strong attachment to money. They want to have more of it all the time. And they also believe they need to work to get it, and that's capitalism. Most of us believe that the harder you work, the more money you can make. And we believe in equality and equal rights. That's another belief. We also believe in the protection of rights and freedom, which we use the Constitution. We're always referring to that whenever we think that there's a right that's being violated. So we hold those values very dear to us, and that's kind of part of being American. All right, so now I'd like you to think about another culture. Think of how you would describe the culture of people who live in New York City. What beliefs, values, or attitudes do you think they all have? And remember, we can go back to this list on what culture is. We can think about the collective knowledge they may have, the collective experience people in New York City might have, the collective beliefs, the values, the attitudes, notions of time. Those would all be very interesting things to kind of analyze for a minute. So take a couple of minutes and think about this. Maybe write your thoughts down on a piece of paper and pause the movie. Once you've got your thoughts written down, unpause the movie, and you can pause it by clicking on the video and pressing the space button. And I'll go over some things that you may have written down and kind of compare it to what I came up with. All right, so we're all going to have some different answers about the culture of New York City. Maybe you know a lot about it, maybe you don't. But we just want to make sure you understand what culture is. So some good associations or good descriptions that describe the culture of New York City might be that New Yorkers have a faster sense of time. Life moves a lot faster there. They are busy. They're always going here, there, everywhere, and their concept of time would be different than even ours. Their idea of space is different, and this is because a lot of the buildings in New York City are very small. So if you get an apartment, it's typically under 500 square feet. And if you can imagine what 500 square feet is, I'd say a large living room is probably about 500 square feet. New Yorkers, despite, you may have a misconception on this, despite what you may think, they are actually more accepting. And that is because diversity is the norm in that city. They are used to seeing people that are not like them. So it's not as shocking as it is to us. Bad associations would be they're angry people. They're always yelling. Foreigners always live in New York City. People, just because they're a different race in New York City doesn't mean they're a foreigner. New York is a port where a lot of immigrants came in and a lot of people stayed in that area. So because of that, it's even more diverse. And just because they look like they're a different ethnicity doesn't mean they weren't born in America. As long as your ideas were based on facts and not opinions, you probably did pretty well on this. All right, so there's a couple things that cause us to misinterpret culture, and the biggest culprit is pop culture, and the next culprit is media. Often the media and pop culture focuses on one thing at a time. So like when you hear that same song over and over and over and over, that's kind of like what the media does. If something's popular, it gets played nonstop. And because it's the only thing we're exposed to, the world just adopts that idea as that's how all those people are. So that's often how we get a misconception of culture. That's one reason why a lot of Americans might think that Muslims hate Americans, because that's what CNN has portrayed to us. And here's an example of misconceptions. Now imagine you are from another country, you haven't had that much exposure to America, but the one exposure you do get is this magazine that you see sitting at the grocery store all the time. And you know for a fact it comes from America. And a lot of people in America like to read this magazine. So you kind of look at the headlines that are plastered all over this magazine cover here, and you look at this Ariana Grande in her bathing suit on the cover, and you go, oh, wow, all Americans must be like ... So what conceptions would this foreign person get about America if they were to look at this? Take a couple seconds and just think about it. You don't need to write it down. You can pause the video. If you were a foreigner and this was your only exposure to American culture, you might think that our culture is obsessed with sex. You see "We're Obsessed" in big letters on the cover of the magazine, and the word sex in big letters. You might think that we value being thin because it's got headlines about working out, getting a bikini body. We have a thin person on the cover. We might value vacations because it's saying that this person deserves a vacation. You might think we're vain because all these headlines are all about ourselves and how to improve them. And you might think that we like to work out a lot because we've got 2 headlines on there about improving our body and doing exercises. So some of these ideas may belong to some of these descriptions may describe some people in America. I'm sure they would describe a lot of people, but it may not be values that are deeply rooted in them. Those values and beliefs and aspects of culture, they're going to be common among the majority of Americans. For it to be a culture, it has to apply to the majority and be deeply rooted in the values and beliefs of people. It can't just be like a fashion or a fad, like having a bikini body. That's not something that a lot of people value. It's something we might like to have. Okay, so how do we use this to analyze culture in literature? As you read your story, you're going to need to take notes about what you observe in the story and what you think might be culture and what you don't think is culture. So this means you'll have to keep some questions in mind as you read. As you read and go through the message that the author is trying to give you, you want to constantly ask yourself, is this an action or a movement that represents the values, beliefs, or attitude of most people? So if something's being described, then that's something you should ask yourself. You should also ask yourself, is this just how the narrator feels or what he believes, or is it the values of the people? Why, if you do come up with something that is culturally related, you need to answer the question, why is this a part of the culture? What caused the people to adopt this as a cultural value? There's always a root to the pattern. So when I was describing the New Yorkers having a faster concept of time, that's because they typically move a lot faster. They have busier schedules, and they have to get from place to place. You'll need to find the same explanations that are similar to that. So always figure out the why and what caused it. As you read, try and take notes on that information that's related to those questions above. And that is the presentation on culture. If you need more information about analyzing culture in literature, some good search terms would be how to analyze culture in a story or cultural analysis in literature. Those are cultural analysis, story, narrative, literature are all good keywords that you can use to find more information on the internet about this.